Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It is Friday Eve. Happy Thursday, November 14th, 2024. I'm News 6 meteorologist David Nazario, and we have our favorite wrong way digital weather center sign back in business in the background. We had that taken out of the room during the election time because that's our handy dandy touchscreen, big screen for all things election and poll data during that going on last week. We have it back in the digital weather center, so we are proud to have that on display, and we are rocking today with our tropical and local weather update. We're not going to focus too heavily on the tropics today. We're going to start off with the tropics, taking a look at Tropical Depression 19. And then I also want to rock into some good news that we have here in the Sunshine State and pretty much the rest of the United States all together. That's going to be occurring as we not only go through this weekend, but into the following week. So with that being said, let's get started. Let's get over to our tropical satellite. So this is Tropical Depression 19. Also, before we go any further, I just want to say hello to the folks joining us both on Just Weather and News 6, as well as a howdy to those of you on News 6 Plus who don't have the capabilities of chatting with us, but just know that you are acknowledged, and it's great to have you a part of the stream today. Rodney Shelby, Judy Tokos, Carbon Fiber, Julia, and April Claremont. Thanks so much for tuning in today. So as I'd mentioned, this is going to be the Tropical Infrared Satellite for depression number 19. Now, National Hurricane Center still has this forecast to become a tropical storm. This is likely to become Tropical Storm Sarah before it either takes a very close shave across the areas of Nicaragua and Honduras. Unfortunately, you can already see in the satellite image here, we have tremendous west side loaded thunderstorm and heavy rainfall activity already inundating the coastal portions of both of those countries, slowly but surely beginning to expand its reach further off towards the west into Belize and parts of the Yucatan Peninsula as well. This is going to be the name of the game with this system now as well. If you recall, the key takeaways we've brought up a couple of times in the last several streams we've discussed, Invest 99, now Tropical Depression 19. And for those of you who may not, one of the potential fail modes for this system would have been if it took too long to organize, never felt really that effect of this first trough and cold front coming through our area right now as we speak, this would end up crashing and burning in Central America. And that's what we're realizing here. You can see, I'll zoom us down one more time before we get over to the latest information. You can see that this is, it's got a decent look. It's like an upside down shrimp appearance, which, is not necessarily the most organized representation for a tropical system, but lots of thunderstorm activity, lots of cirrus dense overcast, or CDO for short. And, it has taken on bona fide tropical characteristics as opposed to its designation yesterday, PTC, potential tropical cyclone number 19. Let's get on over to the latest information on this feature. So as you can see here, we have max sustained winds of 35 miles an hour in the center of circulation. And there you can see that D is exactly where it is parked just off the coast of Nicaragua. It is expected to come very close, if not make landfall to the country of Nicaragua over the next 12 hours. It is moving painfully slow. I honestly don't know if I agree with that west movement at 14 miles an hour. It definitely looked a lot slower than that on the satellite imagery, especially since the low-level circulation is still lagging back behind all that tremendous thunderstorm coverage over the countries of Central America itself. So as you can see here, we'll go ahead and start pumping this out in time. Here comes the first segment of the track. We're expecting that named storm development by tonight, 40-mile-an-hour tropical storm, and the National Hurricane Center track kind of keeps it right up against the shoreline of Honduras. They're headed towards Belize, strengthening actually to a 50-mile-an-hour tropical storm. From here is where it gets a little dicey. Some of our models think that the stall is expected to happen after it moves to the north, if not right over top Honduras and Nicaragua, and that's what could possibly kill it altogether from going any further than a depression, or in the sake of the forecast here, a named storm, a low-end tropical storm. And then from there, we fast forward the clock just a little bit further, and you can see that as we go just a bit further in time, that's when it starts to take that, oh, whoops, it was a bit of a lag there. I have to go back for a second. Sorry, let me rewind the clock. There we go. Sometimes this system doesn't register the first click, and I have to kind of do it again. See, as you can see, I clicked once. It hasn't done anything. Let's go ahead and fast forward. There she goes. So we've already talked about that part of the cone. Now, this is the part that gets interesting for us in the Gulf of Mexico. You can see yesterday, if you've been keeping up with this system away from our live streams, the National Hurricane Center had this as a tropical storm up over the northern Yucatan Peninsula. Now we're expecting a 35-mile-an-hour tropical depression, Sarah, as it exits into the Bay of Campeche, the southwest quadrant of the Gulf of Mexico. And from here, that's where things could get just a little more dicey with that approach of the second frontal system that's expected to come down. Here's a look at our latest spaghetti plots going on through time here. As expected, there they go, getting all kind of dawdled up down there over Central America. I don't know if y'all noticed that, but the spaghetti plots move off towards the west. Then they suddenly marinate a little bit right up against the coastline of Honduras. Some of them take it south and then back towards the north. But then if you look, that's where it starts to get a little interesting, because we are still, despite the land interaction, expecting some kind of recurvature towards our viewing area in central and southern Florida. So regardless of what this system looks like, we are going to feel impacts from it. Don't sit there and, try to write this one off as if nothing's going to happen at all. We are still going to feel it. It's just a matter of now, are we going to see heavier rainfall from it? Will there be a potential for severe weather? Are we still going to get sustained winds, gusty conditions with it as well? Or is it really just going to evaporate as the frontal system picks it up? And we'll talk about the front and all the associations with that once we get back from our first break. Now, this was a graphic that's been passed around the Pinpoint Weather Team, which I think is fantastic. It does an excellent job of kind of pinpointing exactly what it is that we were thinking for these potential fail modes. Instead of using that key takeaway graphic, here we have an actual map graphic to describe what we were anticipating and what the forecast looked like in terms of the fork in the road scenario. Scenario 1 being much weaker. This would be fail mode number 1. We have lots of land interaction, which is what the current forecast stipulates. Scenario number 2, which is what we would have emphasized a lot heavier if this system took on named storm status to the south of Jamaica there. You can see where the icon is currently positioned. That is where it would have developed a lot more rapidly as some of our initial American model and even European model depictions had as a solution. That would have most definitely created a major hurricane. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who, it pains me to say this because it's wrong, and I don't want to speak ill, but we can't go out there throwing fake cones and graphics and thumbnails to get clicks. I've seen numerous graphics out there of fake major hurricane cones headed towards Florida, and that's unacceptable, especially given the time of year and the hurricane season that we've had. I've seen a lot of it. Jonathan has seen it. A lot of the other folks here at the Pinpoint Weather Team have seen it. And it's rough, it's to tell you the truth. That's what National Hurricane Center is for. Trust no cone unless it's got NOAA-NHC.gov slapped on that puppy. And in this case, there's going to be a lot of people with egg on their faces because I saw Sarah's coming, Major Hurricane Sarah. Now everyone's going to be looking silly because that's no longer the case. This is the latest look at the GFS. You can see the GFS has finally gotten away from its bullish ways and is now killing it into Central America and keeping it as a remnant low as it moves across the Central American and Yucatan landmass. Notice the sudden acceleration in the winds out there up across Texas, the Dixie Alley area, kind of meshing with what is now at this point on the graphic tropical depression Sarah. Notice how that wind flow is rapidly accelerating. That is the approach of our stronger frontal system that we're going to get into during the second half of the brief today. Here, we're going to take a quick glance over at the euro. I want to show you what the euro is thinking since the euro has also come down from its bullish ways. Same picture, more or less. The European model and the GFS have really coalesced in this case, and they're actually speaking in unison. You can see a remnant low stuck down there over Central America. Unfortunate for those folks, they're expecting over a foot, if not 2 feet of rainfall, excessive rainfall risk. It will be a disaster of multiple proportions down there for them. So As I mentioned during previous live streams, whenever something forms down in the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico, someone is going to receive it. So we're dodging a bullet here in Florida, but that means somebody else has to take the heat as we kind of keep it at bay. You can see here at Monday, 6 a.m., the Euro is also picking up on that next frontal system. This is next Monday as that approaching stronger frontal boundary comes in. Winds are going to pick up over the southern plains. That's also what's going to help to keep our feature very tame down there in the Caribbean as it enters the Gulf of Mexico beyond that. Finally, some excitement before we lead into the second half, the B block of our show. If you notice, as we go through time on the tropical probabilities, there's really no glaring elephant in the room at this point. There's really nothing out there that we're tracking. So hopefully this is the bona fide conclusion of the 2024 hurricane season. Finally, last but not least, here we go with the key takeaways. Still forecast to become a named storm. Models likely reacted to the day-to-day changes in the storm structure, and I'll talk a little bit about that after the break. And then we have officially realized fail mode number 1. It is expected to crash into Central America and may not be anything more than a rain monster for the folks down there, so we will keep them in our thoughts and prayers as they ride out what could have been a rough experience for us here in Central Florida. So stick with us. We're going to have some great news to break down for our local weather and the southeast weather pattern coming up right after the break. We'll see you all again very soon. Welcome back. Thanks so much for sticking around. So before the break, I wanted to rehash this graphic again because I think it does a very good job of hitting home some of the key points that from what started as a disturbance, a wave out there in the Caribbean, and where we stand right now, the general takeaways that I want you all to keep in your back pocket before we shift gears here. So again, this is still forecast to become a named storm. It might be a little difficult for it to do so. We're getting dangerously close to extreme, extensive land interaction down there. So we might not get Tropical Storm Sarah. Remains to be seen. NHC is forecasting it, so that's neither here nor there. And when I have that second bullet there, reacting to day-to-day changes, believe it or not, our models, especially since they interpolate current conditions as they pull it in, if at that specific point in time the model gets an ingestion of data that suggests a storm or a disturbance, a low pressure is far more organized than what the general thinking is for that feature, it will get a little more bullish because it'll rightfully so assume we already have a developing system. And that's probably why the GFS, the Euro, the AI, the Canadian, and so on initially, when this system was passing to the south of Hispaniola and Jamaica, had all the major hurricane iterations coming out. It had a little bit more consolidation to it. It was more structurally sound, and it wasn't ripping off towards the west in response to the high pressure up over us right now. So that's why the models did such a dramatic shift and break in continuity, and that's also why Jonathan and myself have gotten some shade for this, even though this is another fine example of it. This is why we don't immediately sound the horn on a worst case scenario instance, because there are still, instances where things can dramatically change, and we don't want to be left holding the bag. There is such thing as preparing and over-preparing to be safe, but at the same time, we're not going to cause stress or panic or any kind of tension with you all if we ourselves are not concrete in our own forecast. And we can talk more about that later on in time. Last but not least, we have realized that fail mode 1, we still need to monitor what happens with this feature as it gets out over the Gulf of Mexico, because our models getting tongue-tied. They do still carry an area of low pressure as it comes up off the Yucatan into the Bay of Campeche into the north. And then from there, that's when things could get a little more sporty with this feature as it interacts with the frontal system coming in. So now, this is where it gets exciting. I want you to watch the temperature graphic here as we go over the next few days and into next week. Look at how those shades of blue really start to crank up over the southeast and the rest of the east coast United States. I'll go back in time and I'll fast forward for you all so you can see. As we go through this weekend, our temperatures are looking pretty good down here, which is fantastic, or a nice little reprieve from all the hot and, high heat index that we've had for several days, the abnormally warm temps, thanks to blocking high pressure that helped to steer Raphael away, and believe it or not, is once again saving us from future Sarah, if it does get a name at this point because of how much it's been bullied into Central America. Finally, the week of Thanksgiving, this is what gets really exciting. I know a lot of us native Floridians may not like the cold too much. I, for one, being a native Floridian, love when we get a chance to finally bust out the fall or winter attire. And check this out, as we get into the following week, not next week, we still have to battle with whatever happens down there in the Gulf, but into the following week, actually, you know what? No, I think I'm dorking up my times. I forget, it's already the 14th of November, as fast as time is moving on. So actually, I should say, yes, towards the very tail end of this upcoming week, and then into the next week after that, Thanksgiving week. That's also why Thanksgiving comes much later this year. I don't know if y'all noticed that, but it's on the 28th, I believe it is. And I wasn't even used to seeing that. Being the last Thursday of the month, we see Thanksgiving. So anyways, as we get closer to the Thanksgiving holiday, look at how the temps are really going to drop. You can see that we are still seeing low 60s in Central Florida, but as we go just a little further in time, those cooler temps are really going to make their way down. I'm trying to get the cursor to line up perfectly, but key takeaway here is we could possibly be starting some of the days leading up to Thanksgiving in the upper 30s, low 40s, with highs topping out in the low to mid 60s. Now, I don't know about you all. Like I said, as I know a lot of native Floridians, they don't really take too kind to the frigid weather, but I, for one, am pretty excited about that. There's nothing that sounds better right about now, especially dealing with the tropics as much as we have, than some bona fide fall / almost pseudo-winter-like weather. So here's a run through of the GFS, and I promise I will cycle this back through. I just wanted to play it through so you can see exactly how much is going to be going on, which is why the thumbnail of the video is tracking major changes. I'll go ahead and start from the beginning, and you can see as the loop ends, we're underneath that massive high pressure system that's really going to help to bring our temperatures down and introduce us to some bona fide polar air. I'll go ahead and stop the loop so we can go back to the beginning, and I want to fast forward to when potential tropical depression Sarah is in the Gulf. So you can see right there, that's probably going to be a severe weather event for the Great Plains. You can see all those dark reds, oranges, and yellows. That is a key indicator that we have lots of warm air surging out of the Gulf of Mexico and a lot of cold air back behind it. We have a combination of a pressure gradient wind. The changes in pressure on either side of where that wind flow is what's driving the change in the wind speeds out of that southerly direction. And then believe it or not, because cold air is much denser than warm air, you get that thermal wind event where cold air quickly coming in is going to push the warmer air out of the way. And with that density change, that's what's going to create all those winds as well. You go just a little bit further in time, and then right about here is where you can see what's left of Tropical Depression Sarah, if it gets that name status. You can see down there in the center of the Gulf of Mexico. Let me pull out the handy-dandy pen tool and see if I can pull up the other screen so I can draw it for you all. There we go. Right here is what could possibly be remnants of our tropical feature, and the front is butting right up against it there. You can see the winds surging off the plains, getting off into the western Gulf of Mexico, and as a result, this is what's going to pick up what's left of this tropical cyclone. And part of the reason why I'm not concerned, but I'm raising an eyebrow, if you will, because we have this pocket of warm tropical air meeting some dense cold air, and that's usually a recipe for some strong thunderstorms and maybe even severe weather. So we're going to take a look at that and start to investigate whether or not that could possibly be an issue as we go over the next several weeks. But before we get ready to wrap up and take some questions, I wanted to show you the temperature trend, at least for the next 7 days. You can see here, as we go through the weekend, today and tomorrow, we're still going to be above average temps. That front is not all the way down just yet. But then notice finally, once that cool air catches up with the initial progression of that front and trough, that's when we're going to dip into the upper 70s for high temps. And the mornings are going to be extremely pleasant for getting out and getting into some outdoor activities if you are lucky enough to have Saturday and Sunday off. And then next week we'll kind of rebound just a smidge until you can see Thursday, and then especially the following weekend. And the next week, Thanksgiving week, is when we'll see those temps really coming down with the approach of that next second and stronger front. So with that being said, thank you all so much for being such a wonderful audience. Let's open it up to a quick Q&A. I don't see anybody talking in the News 6 YouTube channel, and I see a lot of comments here with the Just Weather page. So let me go ahead and take a look at a few of those real quick. Big shout out to all of you guys tuning in. Thank you so much for leaving the comments. Let's see. Do we have any questions in there? It doesn't look like we have any questions. Might have to get out the long pants and the jackets, Rodney Shelby says over on Just Weather. That is true. I honestly love to dress up for fall and winter. That's kind of why I wish Florida had a bit more of that on occasion. I have a lot of really good coats and jackets and other things that I'd like to wear on a regular occasion. I was reading Genesis's name and I said Acasis. Genesis says, one moment is like we're back, and then the next moment it's over. We're back and it's over. That's been the entire hurricane season, it feels like. At least we are practicing for the next season. Let's see next week what's coming, and we will be thankful for that on Thursday. Completely agree with you. I'm glad that we are no longer, I believe you asked the question last week, how much longer are we holding on to our butts? Well, it's safe to say we can finally let up the pressure just a little bit. Beach Club over on Just Weather, could you share temps for next Friday and Saturday for vacation planning? I'll try to pull them up very quickly before we run out of time, but next Thursday and Friday, let me see if I can go through time very quickly here. So this is Friday afternoon. We'll go Friday, 4 p.m. next Friday. And you can see very pleasant temperatures here in Central Florida. We're looking at 77 degrees, potentially in Orlando, 77 out in Tampa, as well as 78 as far south as Miami. So you can imagine temps are going to be down, and it'll feel like the actual temp because we're probably not going to have too much of that mugginess, that humidity hanging out because of the fact we have that high pressure and that dry cold front coming through, which is exciting news. Again, I'm ecstatic. My car doesn't have AC, so anytime we get a nice blast of dry, chilly weather, I'm cruising. Even if there's traffic, so you all know I-4, the turnpike and all that backs up down here for us Central Floridians. So really, really looking forward to that. Oh, Beach Club, you're very, very welcome. Let's see. All right, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions, which is great. Thank you all so much for being such a spectacular audience. We're going to go ahead and close out the live stream, and that's about it. We'll talk to you guys again very soon. If you have any additional questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave a comment in the comments section down below upon the conclusion of this live stream. Thankfully, it looks like the tropics are hopefully going to be buttoning up and saying bon voyage like a message in a bottle, casting out to sea, and we can kind of face the holidays full force. Eventually, Jonathan and I will dabble into a small look at next hurricane season, but I'll leave you with that for now. Until next time, folks, this is the Digital Weather Center signing out.